And so to our final speaker, and then there'll be a good time for questions. Nick Isles, who is an author, consultant, and works with Red Thread Partnership. Nick.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. As you can see, another non-millennial for you. I like the balance on the panel there. I'm going to talk about, that is indeed me, collaboration and what we call frontier leadership. Red Thread is a consultancy, I'm sorry about that, but we are. And we do leadership development, and we help organisations collaborate with our clients to improve their businesses. And here's the plug. We have a book, an ebook coming out called Frontier Leadership, which is going to be on sale, we hope, in the next 6 weeks or so, so you can find out how you too can be a frontier leader. But before I go into that, I want to talk a little bit more about collaboration, because we think collaboration is the key to any organisation's success in the 21st century. And why do we think that? Well, globalisation has ensured that we now increasingly share the same ecosystems. Business ecosystems, supply chain ecosystems. If we take the current debate over Brexit, one of the claims is, of course, that we need to collaborate more with countries outside the European Union. Other people say, no, the collaboration with the European Union is really critical. So collaboration is happening now, it's happening more intensely, and whether we like it or not, it is going to be the key increasingly for business success. We also, as people, are hardwired for reciprocity. We're social animals. We like to collaborate. We like to share things. We're going with the grain. And competition just isn't alone is going to win you the race. You're going to have increasingly less competitive advantage from the innovations you come up with. And we've heard from speakers like Nick and Julia and others how they're continuously innovating. It's not something you do sit back and go, oh, that's it, we've made our millions. In this environment, knowledge is now open, it is free, it is available, and your ideas are going to be taken by someone else and improved. And that's great. So collaboration is critical to that process. In fact, collaboration really is the engine for innovation. Without it, you're not going to get the sorts of ideas that people are going to be really grabbed. And leadership in this context, coming back to leadership, is absolutely about the we, not the me. So you've got to think about leadership differently. We call it frontier leadership. And what we're saying about frontier leadership is it's got three elements. First of all, that you've got to understand the complexity of the operating environment you're now in. And as you'll hear in a minute, it's got more complex. And we've heard earlier from some of the wonderful presentations just how complex that operating environment can be. You've got to understand, be rigorous about your own beliefs, the sort of core beliefs that affect the way you make decisions that you may not be aware of. So having the intelligence about yourself, that's true wisdom, is important. And then you have to have an understanding about how your behaviours, the way that you do things, will impact on the actions of your followers, the way that your followers, if you like, or the people that you're trying to lead, are going to collaborate or not with you. So they're the three elements. And what you're trying to do, and this is one of those sort of consultancy diagrams that are absolutely obvious, but you're trying to get a close fit between your operating environment, the organisation and your operating environment, and that's the goal. So, understanding complexity. Let's have a little tour here of a short history of general purpose technologies to get you understanding why change is ever present. And it took us about 10,000 years to come up with two, arguably, the invention of the wheel and domesticating animals. And then things started to speed up. We had a couple between 1400 and 1750. Between 1750 and 1900, there were 5, arguably. And then in the last century, we had 9. So you can see the rate of technological change. This century, there's going to be at least double that. These are major technical frontier innovations that can be spread across lots of different applications in lots of different sectors. And the idea, and we heard earlier from one of our earlier speakers, Gary, about embracing disruption. This wave of technological change isn't going to stop or slow down, it's going to speed up. And we have to be right at the frontier of that. And this just shows you why it's getting harder. That's a Standard & Poor's index of sort of deaths of companies. It's getting harder for companies to survive in this environment because of the rate of technological change, let alone social and political change layered in. So understanding complexity is critical. How do you do that? Well, this is where collaboration comes in. It's not an optional extra. We've heard from our earlier speakers about how they're going about this. This graph is taken from a guy called Ralph Stacey's work. And what he said is, in order to get the right solution for any situation, you have to understand technically what you're dealing with, but also socially getting high levels of agreement that the solution you come up with is the right one. And that means you've got to encourage discussion, experimentation, conversations between different people, trust small groups to go out and experiment. We heard it from Nick. You know, he comes up with loads of ideas and he takes risks, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes. And you need a culture that enables you to do that. And there's another version of this where there's a graph in there called the edge of chaos. And frontier leaders, we would argue, are at the edge of chaos. That's where they need to be. Because if they're not at the edge of chaos, then they're not embracing that disruption. If you're not embracing the disruption, you're not going to be successful, given the rate of change. So understanding complexity is critical. And this is just a little quote, because obviously you need a quote in a presentation like this. And I like this one. Collaboration requires that you stick to your principles and let go of your solutions. And you can't do that unless you're absolutely open to being as collaborative as you possibly can with your competitors. We heard again from Nick how he embraces his competitors in different ways in order to get where he wants to go. And we wouldn't be a consultancy if we didn't have our own model. There it is in all its glory. So there you've got the three elements: context, beliefs, behaviours, assigning the role, and that means about being authentic to yourself, and then the three tasks that you need to do, which is set out there on the right. So that's our glorious model. The book goes into a bit more detail, and obviously we'd be more than happy to talk to any of you about how we might help you implement some of this stuff. And the final slide is really about, once you've done this, once you've got to this point, once you understand the sort of processes that underlie this, how do you make this real in your organisations? And we talk about ownership, and we heard about engagement earlier and how you engage millennials. And what people want is to be trusted. The sovereignties of task, time and place. If you can see people, they're not working. They're going to be on Facebook. If you can't see them, they're working for you. Trust them to do the job when and where they feel best able to do it. They need to have a sense of personal growth. We heard earlier, money isn't everything. How do you collectively reward people for their efforts, but also recognise the genius of their individual contribution? So there needs to be some sense of personal development. And there's got to be procedural justice within the organisation, a sense of fairness, that I am treated fairly. And the processes that underpin that are transparent. So transparency, good communication, using social media, all of those things are important. And then making sure you resource people to go out and try and do those experiments. And then you will be really acting as a frontier leader, using collaboration as the mechanism for you to grow your individual organisation. Thank you very much.
Nick, that's terrific. Thanks for the very welcome appetizer for your book, and some very insightful, again, thoughts there. Frontier leaders operating at the edge of chaos. That explains a lot to me about why I went so wrong, really, as a leader, I think, in so many ways. But really fascinating, all of you.